Hello, this is Don with the inaugural episode of Change Well, a podcast by Wellness Leadership LLC to help those struggling with workplace anxiety and workplace wellness. Our theme song will play in future podcasts, but first we got to tell you the story behind the theme song. So stay tuned at the end and you'll hear it. I may even do a few songs in between. The podcast will offer tips and tricks from my experience transforming from a 358-pound, very grumpy executive in a consulting firm to a more productive leader who was half the original body weight, and in the process, I helped fix my body and soul. I can't say I'm not sometimes grumpy, but I'm a lot better. So let's dive into the summary of my journey before launching into the full origin story. About 10 years ago, I was in bad shape. The picture gives you an idea. Taken on my birthday, I'm seen here trying to do Elvis in Blue Hawaii. Elvis is a longtime idol of mine. I'm a pretty good impersonator, if I do say so myself. Well, let me show you. Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. See, I could do that even when I was at my peak weight, but maybe I couldn't dance like Elvis then. But I always preferred the young Elvis to the 70s. Too many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and peanut butter and banana sandwiches. Elvis. I had to do something. My 30th reunion was coming, and the picture that you see here is the image that people remember me at the Academy. I was skinny Elvis, and I could really rock out. So in 2015, I did two things that forever changed my life. First, I got a checkup. If you are skipping your checkups, go out and schedule it right now. That told me I had some health issues. And two, I joined WW, formerly known as Weight Watchers, and listened to my wife, we should all do that, to learn how to get well. 1 year later, I lost half my body weight, which, to tell you, was 180 pounds. I enjoyed my reunion, became a lifetime member at WW, walked 50 miles in one day, and returned to skinny Elvis. Having fixed my body, I now turn to my soul. The weight loss had helped some in curing my normally grumpy, hot-tempered disposition, but not all the way. So I got counseling and I practiced prayer and mindfulness. My colleagues started to notice the difference and my productivity improved. Having restored my body and soul wellness, it was time to play it forward by helping others. I launched wellness programs. Here are some of them that I did. One was Peloton Pandemic Pandemonium. Another was digital karaoke. I planned an ecumenical festival for all cultures and religions called the Festival of Lights, and that's just a few. Another one was a monthly book club called Learning to Lead. I had hit my stride. I also gave presentations on what I did to get better. I had found my niche, and along with Colette, my wife, who is a naturopath and also a registered nurse, I was ready for my second act if the opportunity arose. Well, it arose. It wasn't really something expected, but after 30 years at my company, I left about 4 months ago. The mission of Change Well in our company, Wellness Leadership, is born out of this origin story. Our mission is to help other people like you thrive through wellness. We partner with individuals and organizations to help them form a culture of wellness, to accomplish their mission, be more productive, but on the same side, take care of their people. It is the foundation of our 3 services. You can read more about that in the link below, wellnessldr.com. More of those services at our website. Now back to the story. Let's look at the unwell practices that I did. Everybody tells you about all the well practices you do, but very seldom does somebody tell you, hey, this is what I did. So how did I come from an Army officer that could pick up a ruck, run 13 miles, to a guy that was heavier than the heaviest offensive lineman in the NFL, with none of the strength, none of the fitness, and I couldn't block anybody. My bad change story starts as a slow progression to a rapid decline into morbid obesity. Hey, it's not a fun story. And I would rather start with the story that's coming up next podcast. But it is a story that needs to be said for others who are dealing with this problem now. Growing up in my youth, I was kind of a chunky kid. All our family's prone to be heavy. But at 15, I shot up like a weed and played 4 sports. And when I continued in the Army, they paid me for my fitness so I could keep my weight under control. Even in the Army, sometimes when the wait time came in where we had to weigh in, I was still a little bit heavy. So I just pick up a ruck, run a few miles, and made the weight standard. But that all changed when I left the Army and moved into consulting. Over the next 25 years in consulting, I was doing okay. I was heavy, but I was ranging from 220 to 260 and could get back down at any moment. But then something happened that really, really hit me, and we'll talk about that trigger in a moment. But what was the slow burn of gaining this weight? First, I was not exercising that much. You know, in the Army, they pay you to go out there and exercise every day, and if you miss it, you're in trouble. They don't do that in the consulting world. And so I was exercising, but not as much. 2, I was subject to yo-yo dieting. Hey, I would try everything. Slim fast, protein diet. I even tried a vegetarian diet one time, but I ended up eating M&Ms, so it wasn't that great. The last thing is my metabolism slowed down. As you get older, we all know that it slows down. So instead of being able to eat 4 ding-dongs and never gain a pound, I could eat 2 ding-dongs and gain a lot of weight. So that's what I did. I didn't eat 4, I ate 2, but I gained weight. Still, about 2012, I was in a redeemable place. Then 2 singular events caused me to spike 100 pounds in less than a year. It was not a pretty sight, and I don't recommend it to everybody. The 2 singular events were, we had a hockey stick moment at work. The organization that I was running grew from 60 people to 1,000 people in less than 4 months. And on top of that, we had vacated 2 jobs, so I took over 3 jobs. Later, 2 of my jobs were taken over by superiors, so I just couldn't say no. I said, we have to accomplish this. I have to drive through it, and that was one problem. The second problem is I lost my remaining parent. And I never took a moment to grieve, and I was also handling her estate. So those 2 things combined to cause a whole wealth of bad habits. So let's go over these bad habits. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to show you how to defeat these bad habits and other ones, but also if you're doing them, just so you can see that other people did them before. First is binge eating. During the time I was working like crazy, I would binge eat all the time. So let me tell you what I used to do. You see this cup here with Wellness Leadership? Well, this was unwellness leadership back in the day. We used to have a bowl full of peanut M&Ms. And so about 3 hours after lunch, when I was stressed out, I would fill 2 cupfuls of these. I would literally drink the peanut M&Ms to get a sugar rush. And then we worked till maybe 9, 10. That was an early day. And I would drive home, and skipping dinner, I'd say, okay, I should get a quarter pounder with cheese, a milkshake and fries. And on the way in, I didn't have time to make breakfast, or I thought I didn't have time to make breakfast. And I would eat 2 Egg McMuffins with sausage, but I would take off the egg thinking I could lose a little weight on that. Overworking is number 2. My binge eating was mainly a symptom of my inability to say no to everybody. Now, you just heard about this. I fashioned myself as an Iron Man. Coming from the Army, I said, hey, I got to be in the trenches with my people. And so I took everything on, and I could not let them work if the old man was not working with them. So that was one thing. I would overwork, and I really didn't need to. Third, born out of that was not sleeping. Hey, I still don't sleep that much, but back then I pushed on very, very little sleep. Sometimes 3-4 hours. I think my average was about 4 hours. Now, I get more sleep now, but still not good. Let me give you just an illustration of what I used to do. One day, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and we were working on this gnarly problem in the code. And I was there, and then I realized that I had to catch a plane to Des Moines, Iowa, of all things, at 6. And I realized I had to go home, and it took an hour, and then I had to go to the airport, which took an hour and a half. So I jumped on the phone. I said, hey, guys, I got to leave. I was talking on the phone while I was driving home, and all I can remember thinking is, please let me make it to the plane without crashing the car so I can get a little sleep. I hit the ground in Iowa. I did get there. I was safely. You can see me. I'm still here, right? But the thing just didn't. I started working as soon as I hit the ground there. Number 4, you can see what's driving all this. Stress. A lot of it was just the stress at the work, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I really didn't need to. I'd say 50% of it was, no, more than 50%. 70% of it was me putting pressure on myself because I fashioned myself as an Iron Man. I was the only one that could do it. And when the guys didn't do it exactly the way I wanted it to do, I said, okay, I'll go in my garage and fix it tomorrow. So that's it. It was not enough delegation and worry that somehow I was going to let people down. Number 5, I didn't go to the doctor. I can't tell you, my feet swelled from a size 10.5, its normal size, to 12.5. And I walked around with walking pneumonia several occasions. I just didn't go to the doctor. Finally, my boss forced me to go to the doctor, and they found out I had 2 health conditions, one sleep apnea. We'll get more to that in a moment in the next podcast. The other one was a heart ailment. And lesson learned for all of you, if you do not feel well, if your feet start ballooning and swelling, go to the doctors, okay? You're not that important that you have to work through when you have a health ailment. Number 6, we touched upon this a little bit in the trigger point. I did not take time to grieve for my mother passing. And I did not recognize the symptoms of depression. So for most of the time I was working depressed and used the work to take my mind off of the loss. So that is a bad habit. Take time to grieve. You cannot help other people if you do not help yourself. And lastly, I'm saying it's last, but it's very, very important, and it shouldn't be discounted. I did not drink enough water. I drank gallons and gallons of leaded Coke, Coca-Cola, not the other kind. And I drank coffee, right? And I never drank water. So I was constantly running around dehydrated. So that was part of my problem with my weight gain and also my sleep. So now we return to unveil the bad picture again. This is what happens when you go and let yourself go and don't take care of yourself. This is what happens when you change unwell. I got it from one of my colleagues as a reminder after I made the turnaround. A few weeks after this picture was taken, I tripped while leaving work at 3 a.m. and knocked myself out on the ground. After an unspecified time, I don't know how long it was no one there to help me. I could only get back in my car by crawling to my car because I was too heavy to lift myself up on the bumper and get an upright position. I keep my smashed glasses from that period to this day. And by the way, with that, we're going to end with the theme song. Next week, we'll have guitar backing, but let me sing it for you now. I was working an 18-hour day when I slipped and I fell. At that very moment, I knew I had to change well. There's no way to sustain it. You'll crash and burn. Will not be able to work with no way to earn. Change well. And then you can lead. Change well. And your kids you can feed. Turn your life around for the final bell. It's now or never, you have to change well. It's now or never, you have to change well. Thanks for listening to episode 1, and stay tuned for the rest of the story next week. Until then, check out our company site at wellnessldr.com. Thank you.